Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Unraveling History, and today, as you can probably tell by the title of this video, I will be talking about Alexander the Great. Now in this video specifically, it will be about the Balkans Campaign, because I will be splitting these videos into three parts. Balkans Campaign for part 1, Hellespont up until Guatemala for part 2, and part 3 will be from Guatemala up to the Mali. That's the third video will be like through India and all that stuff. Because otherwise you will be sitting here for a very long time and be very bored with my voice after that point, and my voice can get very grating. Anyway, let's begin. Alexander's journey begins in the fair lands of the Balkans, where luckily for Alexander, not so lucky for his father, King Philip II was assassinated, and because of this the Greek cities under Macedonian control decided to be difficult and revolt. Alexander, instead of taking advice and resolving this through diplomatic means, decided that blood is the answer to everything and assembled an army. He and 3,000 cavalry headed south to Thessaly, where he found the army occupying the pass between Mount Olympus and Mount Ossa. Alexander, always the one with a mind for strategy, had his cavalry pass behind them while they slept, and when they awoke, they decided that surrender was probably the best idea at the time. Alexander, having the Thessalian forces under his control and added to his army, he rode to the Peloponnese, where the Athens, realizing just how screwed they were, sued for peace, and Alexander accepted and made him the leader of the Sacred League. Alexander probably let out a massive sigh as he learned of the Thracian revolt and marched north to quell them, as safeguarding his borders was important if he was going to go along with his ultimate plan, invading Persia. The Thracians and Trebalians, not realizing exactly who they were dealing with at this point, got smashed by Alexander and effectively routed beyond the Danube River. It was about this time, however, that Alexander heard about another revolt, this time in Illyria, led by Cleotus and King Glaucus, and marched to Pelium, a settlement which stood in a pass that was crucial to Alexander as it allowed easy passage from Illyria into Macedon. The Agrianians that were allied to Alexander safeguarded their passage into Illyria by making incursions into the country and preventing attacks in Alexander's army, and as such the Macedonian forces managed to reach Pelium essentially unhindered. On immediate arrival, a camp was erected, but Alexander noticed that the heights that surrounded the town were occupied by Cleotus' forces, and resolved this by taking it from them, and as a result, forcing the enemy to retreat into the settlement. Alexander tried to take the settlement by force immediately after, but failed, and instead mounted a siege. The arrival of King Glaucus, however, ruined his plans, and Alexander was forced to retreat onto the plains. This put Alexander in a precarious position. Not only now was Alexander completely outnumbered, but he was also low on supplies. However, if he waited any longer, it would give Athens and Thebes more time to mount another revolt, which was at the time in the works. Alexander sent out Philotas' forces to forage for supplies. However, Glaucus saw this move and intercepted them. Alexander pulled a counter-interception, and if that isn't a word, it is now, and just barely managed to push King Glaucus' forces back. Alexander figured out that before the town could be captured, the heights must be taken first, and as such he came up with a cunning plan. He had a small force take placement in front of the town in order to prevent another sortie from Glaucus, and had the rest placed in phalanx formation march towards the heights, acting as if it was simple drills. The forces on the heights watched as Macedonians marched towards them. The pass itself was a defile so narrow that only 4 men abreast would be able to fit through it, and it was also the defile that Alexander's army marched through to get to Pelium. At the last possible moment, however, Alexander ordered his men to charge up the pass and managed to push Glaucus' forces back and retake the heights, and rumoured is that not a single armoured soldier was killed during the fighting. Soon after that, he decided that the camp would do better on the other side of the ford, and despite an attack from the Illyrian side, Alexander managed to push this back by ordering a turnaround and simulating an advance with his infantry and initiating a charge with his cavalry. Once on the other side, his forces were able to freely gather supplies and await reinforcements. Word got to him, however, that the forces within Pelium were getting careless and disorganized as they believed that the Macedonians were retreating. Alexander, taking advantage of this, decided to wait until night and launched an assault on the town. He, along with the shield bearers and some other units, raced ahead of the main force and caught the Illyrians off guard and sleeping, and so a slaughter ensued. The Illyrians begged for terms, and Alexander was more than happy to oblige, but only if the Illyrians swore fealty. Again, which they accepted. However, upon hearing rumours that Alexander was killed at Pelium, Athens and Thebes led a fresh revolt against Macedon. Alexander, being unhappy in understatement, force-marched his army 240 miles in 14 days to the walls of Thebes. Athens and Sparta backed Thebes and had armies waiting, but shocked by the speed of Alexander's army and the sight of a not-so-dead Alexander, they soon held back to await what would happen. But even so, the Thebans stood firm against the Macedonian army. Alexander had no wish to burn the city to the ground, but despite being turned down on more than lenient terms, Alexander was forced to assault the city. The Thebans fought valiantly despite facing superior and far more experienced soldiers. However, Alexander exploited a weakness and attacked an abandoned gate, and upon realising that the wars had been lost, the Thebans retreated into the city to fight a final battle. However, during the carnage, the Macedonians went on a massacre and slaughtered every person in sight, women and children included, and 6,000 Theban citizens were killed. The Macedonians ultimately won, and to show the other cities just how serious he was, and to demand submission, the remaining 30,000 people were sold into slavery, and the city was plundered, sacked, burnt, and ultimately razed to the ground. Surprised by the brutality of this, Athens and Sparta backed down. Alexander, after renewing some treaties which Sparta declined ultimately, marched back up to Macedon to prepare his army and his wealth for an invasion of Asia. It was then in the spring of 334 BC in which he began to cross. And that, folks, is where we begin our next video, where we'll be going up to Guatemala, including the epic, if comical, siege of Tyre. And in that, folks, this is Unraveling History, and have him a good one.